Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi appeared to be the perfect match for Princess Beatrice. Calm, confident, and polished, he entered one of the most famous families in the world at a time when the British royal family was facing crisis after crisis. To many people, he seemed like a stable presence, a successful businessman who quietly won the heart of a princess. But behind the carefully managed image was a story far more complicated than most people realized. Long before he met Beatrice, Eduardo was already building a life with another woman, a woman named Dara Huang. Dara was not simply a former girlfriend. She was a highly accomplished architect, educated at Harvard, ambitious, intelligent, and successful in her own right. Together, they seemed to have everything needed for a bright future. They became engaged and were planning a life together. Yet beneath the surface, cracks had already begun to appear. When Dara became pregnant, something that should have brought them closer instead highlighted tensions that had already been growing between them. Reports and accounts from people familiar with the situation suggested that their relationship had become strained, with periods of distance and silence that hinted at deeper problems. What should have been a joyful chapter instead became a period marked by uncertainty, emotional strain, and growing separation. Dara reportedly fought hard to keep the relationship together, especially with a child on the way. She understood that if things fell apart, she would likely carry most of the responsibility for raising the child. But eventually the tension reached a breaking point. Following a serious argument, the relationship effectively collapsed. It was a painful ending to what had once appeared to be a promising future. In 2016, their son was born. Christopher Wolf Mapelli Mozzi, affectionately known as Wolfie, arrived in a family that was already struggling. Despite the difficulties behind the scenes, the public continued seeing photographs of Eduardo and Dara together throughout 2017. They attended events, smiled for cameras, and presented the image of a united couple. Yet appearances can be misleading. By 2018, the engagement had ended. What made the breakup unusual was how quietly it happened. Their engagement had never been formally announced, which meant there was no official statement when it ended. There were no public explanations, interviews, or attempts to shape the narrative. The relationship simply disappeared from public view. That silence would later become a recurring theme in Eduardo's story. Almost immediately after the breakup, Eduardo began appearing with Princess Beatrice. The timing raised questions. Many observers wondered when their relationship had truly begun. Did it start only after the engagement with Dara ended, or had feelings already developed beforehand? No definitive answers were ever provided. What remained undeniable was that Wolfie, their young son, stood at the center of the transition. Through no choice of his own, he became connected to the British royal family because of his father's new relationship. To understand Eduardo's choices and behavior, many people look back to his upbringing. He was born on November 19, 1983, in London's Portland Hospital, a hospital famous for serving wealthy and influential families, including members of the royal family. Interestingly, Princess Beatrice herself was born in the same hospital several years later. Eduardo's family background was unusually international. His father, Alessandro Mapelli Mozzi, was born in Argentina, raised in Italy, educated in England, and later represented Great Britain in the 1972 Winter Olympics. After his athletic career ended, Alessandro reinvented himself as an art dealer and became involved in cultural and artistic circles. This ability to adapt, reinvent, and succeed in different worlds became an important part of the family identity. Eduardo's mother, Nikki Williams Ellis, also built an accomplished life. She worked across politics, design, and charitable projects. After her remarriage to Christopher Shale, Eduardo grew up in a blended family environment that included step-relatives and multiple influences. Some observers later noted similarities between that upbringing and Eduardo's own future family structure. A particularly significant event occurred in 2011. Christopher Shale, Eduardo's stepfather, died suddenly at the Glastonbury Festival. The death shocked the family and attracted intense media attention because Shale was a prominent political figure associated with future British Prime Minister David Cameron. Just before his death, a leaked memo written by Shale had generated controversy across Britain. As a result, the family experienced grief under the harsh spotlight of public scrutiny. Many believe this period shaped Eduardo profoundly. When a family tragedy becomes national news, people often learn to hide their emotions and maintain composure regardless of what they are feeling inside. The experience may have taught Eduardo that public image matters, that vulnerability should remain private, and that difficult situations are best handled quietly. His educational background reinforced his privileged position. He attended the prestigious Dragon School in Oxford, later studied at Radley College, and eventually earned a master's degree in politics from the University of Edinburgh. Opportunities surrounded him from an early age, opening doors that most people never even see. Yet even with these advantages, life continued presenting challenges that would influence the man he became. Another part of Eduardo's identity came from his aristocratic heritage. He inherited the title of Count from the Mapelli Mozzi family line, a title originally granted in 1913 by King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy. Although Italy abolished noble titles after World War II, the family continued using it as a symbol of heritage and identity. Their connection to history was reinforced by the family estate in northern Italy, a centuries-old property that had been passed through generations. Growing up surrounded by such traditions likely reinforced the importance of legacy, reputation, and continuity. By the time Eduardo entered adulthood, he carried not only privilege and opportunity, but also the weight of family expectations, public visibility, and personal experiences that had taught him the value of staying composed under pressure. Those qualities would later define how he handled business challenges, personal relationships, and the extraordinary attention that came with becoming part of the royal family. As Eduardo moved deeper into adulthood, he was determined to create a name for himself beyond family titles and inherited prestige. In 2007, at just 23 years old, he founded a property development company called Bonda. The concept sounded simple but ambitious. The company would identify promising areas, transform properties into luxury residences, and sell them to wealthy buyers seeking high-end living spaces. What began as a small venture quickly grew into a highly successful business. Over the years, Bonda became associated with luxury developments, elegant design, and exclusive real estate projects. Eduardo built a reputation as a businessman with a strong eye for architecture and aesthetics. He openly discussed his dyslexia and explained how it encouraged him to think visually, helping him excel in design-focused industries. To many observers, he represented the image of a modern entrepreneur who combined family connections with personal ambition and hard work. As Bonda expanded, however, criticism followed. London was facing a severe housing crisis, with property prices rising beyond the reach of many ordinary residents. Critics argued that luxury developments often contributed to the problem by increasing prices even further. While investors and wealthy buyers benefited, many local communities struggled to remain in neighborhoods where they had lived for generations. Some journalists questioned whether companies like Bonda were helping solve housing issues or making them worse. Eduardo rarely engaged publicly with these criticisms. Instead, he focused on growing the business and presenting a confident image of success. One particular controversy drew attention in Australia. A luxury beachfront development connected to Bonda attracted investors who believed they were supporting an exciting international project. Promotional materials painted a picture of elegance, prosperity, and long-term value. But when the project collapsed, investors were left disappointed and financially exposed. Reports described individuals who had committed significant savings to the venture only to watch it fail. While criticism emerged, Eduardo maintained his characteristic approach. He did not publicly engage in lengthy explanations or emotional defenses. Instead, he continued attending conferences, networking events, and business gatherings, presenting himself as focused on the future rather than the controversy. By this stage, Eduardo had become known as someone who rarely allowed public pressure to affect his visible demeanor. Whether facing criticism, setbacks, or personal difficulties, he appeared calm and composed. Some admired this quality, seeing it as professionalism and resilience. Others viewed it differently, believing he simply avoided confronting uncomfortable questions. Regardless of interpretation, the pattern remained consistent throughout his life. While Eduardo was building his business career, Princess Beatrice was navigating her own personal challenges. For nearly a decade, she had been involved in a relationship with a businessman named Dave Clark. Their relationship began when she was still a teenager and lasted for many years. Many people expected marriage, yet the proposal never came. Eventually, the relationship ended, leaving Beatrice facing a difficult and uncertain period. She rarely discussed the breakup publicly, choosing to keep the details private. For a woman who had spent much of her life under public scrutiny, maintaining privacy became increasingly important. Then Eduardo entered the picture. Their families had known one another for years. The connection was not the result of a chance meeting between strangers, but rather emerged from overlapping social circles that had existed for decades. According to Eduardo's mother, the family had known Beatrice for much of her life. That familiarity created a foundation that allowed the relationship to develop quickly. By late 2018, it became increasingly clear that Eduardo and Beatrice were spending significant time together. In March 2019, they made one of their first major public appearances as a couple at a fundraising event in London. Cameras immediately focused on the relationship. People wanted to know who this man was. He was not a royal, but he carried an aristocratic title. He was a businessman, but he also came with a complicated personal history, including a recent engagement, a young son, and questions surrounding the timeline of his previous relationship. Public curiosity intensified throughout 2019. The couple attended events together, appeared comfortable in each other's company, and gradually became one of the most discussed relationships within royal circles. Then, in September 2019, Eduardo proposed. He chose to make the moment deeply personal by helping design the engagement ring himself. Working alongside renowned British jeweler Sean Lean, he created a distinctive ring featuring an elegant diamond set within a unique design. The announcement generated excitement across Britain. Many people believed Beatrice had finally found lasting happiness after years of personal disappointment. On September 26, 2019, Buckingham Palace officially announced their engagement. The statement presented a picture of optimism, stability, and a bright future. For Beatrice, it appeared to be the beginning of a new chapter. Wedding plans quickly began taking shape. Venues, guest lists, celebrations, and future arrangements all became subjects of discussion. Everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. Yet beneath the excitement, concerns already existed. Reports later suggested that some senior figures within royal circles felt the relationship had progressed extremely quickly. Questions lingered about Eduardo's recent breakup and the speed with which he had entered a serious relationship with Beatrice. Nevertheless, the engagement moved forward. Then everything changed. Only weeks after the engagement announcement, Prince Andrew agreed to participate in a highly anticipated television interview regarding his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. The interview, intended to address public concerns, instead created one of the biggest public relations disasters in modern royal history. His comments were heavily criticized, and public reaction was swift and overwhelmingly negative. Within days, Prince Andrew announced he would step back from public duties. For Beatrice, the timing could not have been worse. The months following the engagement were supposed to be filled with excitement, preparation, and anticipation. Instead, they became a period dominated by uncertainty. As criticism surrounding Prince Andrew intensified, Princess Beatrice found herself caught between two worlds. On one side was her personal happiness and her plans for the future. On the other was the growing public controversy surrounding her father. Every major news outlet seemed focused on the royal scandal, leaving little room for stories about wedding preparations or engagement celebrations. For Eduardo, this was an introduction to a level of public scrutiny unlike anything he had experienced before. Business controversies and media criticism were one thing. Becoming connected to a royal family facing a major crisis was something entirely different. As the months passed, the situation only grew more complicated. Photographs involving Prince Andrew continued appearing across newspapers and television screens. Every new headline brought renewed attention to allegations and questions that seemed impossible to escape. Public sympathy increasingly shifted toward Beatrice and her sister, who had no control over the circumstances but were nevertheless affected by them. Their family name became tied to discussions they never asked to be part of. Despite the challenges, wedding preparations continued behind the scenes. Beatrice and Eduardo remained determined to move forward. They hoped that time would ease some of the tension and allow attention to return to their future together. But fate had other plans. Early in 2020, the world faced an event that would disrupt nearly every aspect of daily life. The COVID-19 pandemic spread rapidly across continents, forcing governments to impose restrictions, cancel public events, and limit travel. Royal weddings, like countless other celebrations around the world, suddenly faced unprecedented obstacles. The grand ceremony originally envisioned for Beatrice and Eduardo quickly became impossible. Plans that had taken months to organize had to be reconsidered. Venues were affected by restrictions, guest lists were dramatically reduced, and uncertainty surrounded every decision. The large-scale royal wedding many expected simply could not take place. For Beatrice, who had already endured months of stress because of her father's scandal, the pandemic felt like another painful setback. Once again, circumstances beyond her control were changing what should have been one of the most important moments of her life. Eventually, a decision was made. Rather than postponing indefinitely, the couple would hold a much smaller ceremony. On July 17, 2020, they were married at the Royal Chapel of All Saints in Windsor. The wedding was private, intimate, and attended only by close family members. Compared to the elaborate royal celebrations often seen around the world, it was remarkably modest. Yet many observers later felt that this simplicity gave the event a unique sense of sincerity and warmth. One of the most touching aspects of the ceremony involved Queen Elizabeth II. Understanding how much her granddaughter had endured, the Queen made a deeply personal gesture. She allowed Beatrice to wear a vintage gown from her own collection, a dress designed by Norman Hartnell that had been worn by the Queen decades earlier. She also lent Beatrice the diamond fringe tiara she herself had worn on her wedding day in 1947. The gesture carried powerful symbolism. It was not merely about clothing or jewelry. It was a way of showing support, love, and reassurance during a difficult period. Many people viewed the Queen as one of the most important sources of stability in Beatrice's life. While scandals, criticism, and global events disrupted wedding plans, the Queen's actions reminded everyone that family support remained strong. In many ways, her involvement transformed what could have been seen as a diminished ceremony into something deeply meaningful. Prince Andrew attended the wedding and walked his daughter toward her future husband. Yet the controversy surrounding him remained so significant that official wedding photographs largely avoided highlighting his presence. The focus remained firmly on Beatrice and Eduardo. It was another example of how public image and careful presentation shaped royal life. Following the wedding, the couple began adjusting to married life. They initially lived within St. James's Palace, occupying a residence that provided security and proximity to royal responsibilities. Yet their position within the royal family was unique. Unlike senior working royals, they did not carry out a full schedule of official duties. At the same time, their connection to the monarchy ensured they remained subjects of public interest. They existed in a space somewhere between private citizens and public figures. Eduardo faced another important responsibility as he balanced life with Beatrice and his role as a father to Wolfie. By all accounts, maintaining a positive relationship between households became a priority. Beatrice reportedly embraced her role as a stepmother, helping create an environment where Wolfie remained connected to both sides of his family. In a world where blended families often face difficulties, Many observers praised the effort made to prioritize the child's well-being. In September 2021, the couple welcomed their first child together, a daughter named Sienna Elizabeth Mapelli Mozzi. The birth brought joy to the family and marked the beginning of a new chapter. For Beatrice, becoming a mother represented a significant personal milestone. For Eduardo, it expanded a family that was already more complex than most. Alongside Wolfie, Sienna became another important part of a household balancing royal connections with modern family life. Life appeared increasingly stable from the outside, yet challenges continued emerging around them. In 2021, media investigations focused on a technology company where Beatrice held a senior position. Reports examined allegations surrounding the company's founder, generating another wave of uncomfortable headlines. Although Beatrice herself was not accused of wrongdoing, questions inevitably followed. Once again, public controversy found its way into the environment surrounding the couple.